Welcome, everybody, to what is probably going to be the first of many, hopefully, spin-off shows of this podcast. This one is going to be focusing on the entire history of the SmackDown show, which was the second created by the WWE back in the Attitude Era. It started in the year 1999. Now, the goal of this spin-off show is to try to, binge and cover every episode. And there's like over 1,000+ episodes. So I'm looking forward to this. This is a little project I've been thinking about for a long time. SmackDown has primarily been known as like the B show, right? Because everybody knows Monday Night Raw is the one everybody thinks about when talking about watching wrestling on TV during the week, right? Monday was always the big deal for wrestling back in the day. And I know Monday Night Raw still airs, but that was always known as the A show. SmackDown was always the show that aired. It was always taped for the most part. It was always later during the week. I know when I was a kid, we didn't have the channel UPN, which it aired on for most of its original run. I believe it aired on our local Fox channel, like on a late Friday night or late Saturday night, something like that. I think it went off and on. But it was always known as the second show, the one that you don't really focus on. But now, SmackDown is going to be headed to the Fox network, which is going to be on prime time on Fridays at 7 o'clock. It's a big audience. There's Fox is a national company. They have the NFL. They have college football, Major League Baseball. They want to position themselves as a big sports network. And they acquired WWE SmackDown last year. And I think they paid over, I believe I want to say like $5 billion or something like that over the course of how many years. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of attention and marketing push towards it to be one of the main focuses of the WWE product. Now, whether it goes on to get ratings like Raw does will remain to be seen. WWE has been on a downslide over the last year and a half. It's gotten pretty bad where the ratings just continue to get worse and worse. And that's more not because of interest in the product, because, there's another wrestling company that's about to emerge called AEW, also in October on TNT, and there's a lot of interest in that. So there is hunger for the wrestling product. Now, will WWE come to grips with itself and try to make itself into a more up-to-date product? That remains to be seen, but this move to Fox is supposed to be a really big deal. And it is, but let's hope the WWE takes it that way. I mean, they've been on network TV before, but not as big of a channel as this one, as Fox. So I'm going to be going back, and I'm going to review and give you my thoughts on every single episode of SmackDown from its inception. And it started in April 29th, 1999. Now, this was the pilot episode. Everyone mostly remembers SmackDown starting later in August, and everybody remembers the championship match between The Rock and Triple H for the WWE title. But we'll get to that later down the line. And you probably won't be seeing another one of these episodes for quite a while because, like I said, this was a pilot run. They tried it out for the network. And for those of you that don't know what a pilot is, let me speak a little bit of Pulp Fiction for you. So a pilot is a TV show. And what they do is they make one show. That show is called a pilot. Then they show this one show to the people who pick shows. Then they decide they want to make more shows. So that's what this was. It didn't really have the SmackDown look of it yet. They still had the red ropes. They had the same entrance Tron as Monday Night Raw, the Titantron, the huge Titantron. So it kind of looked like an episode of Monday Night Raw, but it was built as SmackDown. They had the logo and the entrance video for it, intro video. So they had all that set in place. And this is where I will begin my journey on Palace Off the Top Rope presents SmackDown. And away we go. Okay, so WWE SmackDown, April 29th, 1999, episode number 1. Now we're a couple of days removed from Backlash, the pay-per-view event, which saw Stone Cold Steve Austin defend the WWE Championship against The Rock in a no-holds-barred match with Shane McMahon as the special guest referee. Austin was victorious, but there was a lot of intertwining storylines going on here, specifically with The Undertaker and Vince McMahon and the Ministry of Darkness and the corporation. So all of that is about to come together, and it's about to explode on this episode, this premiere pilot episode of SmackDown. So the way the show starts off is we get a recap of Raw, and at the Backlash pay-per-view, The Rock was still considered the villain, the heel, the bad guy. But he was starting to get cheers, and there was starting to be friction between him and Shane McMahon and the corporation. So on this recap of Raw, they show The Rock coming out, and this is where he eventually turns into the babyface, which is the good guy. And the corporation turns on The Rock. They beat him up. And so we get highlights on that. And then we also get highlights of the black wedding between The Undertaker and Stephanie McMahon. Now, The Undertaker had abducted Stephanie McMahon from Vince at the Backlash pay-per-view, and that's what led up to that little shenanigans, and that ended that episode of Raw. Stone Cold Steve Austin interrupted the whole thing at the end. I remember seeing that live, popped super hard for it. It was one of my tops, like Stone Cold's music hitting and him coming down the ramp and, kicking ass and taking names. And so we get the recap on all that, and we're set up. And the first ever segment on the SmackDown show is Vince McMahon and Stephanie McMahon coming to the ring for a long promo segment. Now, you're going to be seeing a lot of these because this is the part of the Attitude Era where you get really long promos where they go about almost, I want to say, like 20 minutes. And it's all to just set up like a match. And it's crazy how much time they take to set this up when it could easily, they could just announce it or do a quick cut off 10 minutes of this promo and get to the point. So we're going to be seeing a lot of that. But this is the Attitude Era. Nobody really complained because you had all the superstars at once. Everybody was a superstar on this thing. Everybody was a huge name. Nowadays, when they do a 20-minute segment, it's like, oh, gosh, can you get these people off my screen? Let's get some wrestling going. But here you don't mind it because, like I said, we're at the height. WWE is getting super popular. This is 99, where I think this is one of my favorite years in wrestling history, just because everything is so ramped up and the height and the popularity are just on such a mainstream level. It's like WWE is everywhere. So we got Vince in the ring, and Stephanie's recapping what happened Monday night. And once again, folks, this is 1999. The world was a different time, so the audience here reacts to some stuff with some cheers, shockingly. So Stephanie's talking about being abducted by Taker, having her clothes stripped and all that. Crowd is cheering. I'm like, oh my God, this is stupid. How could the crowd be cheering for that? This girl's talking about how afraid she was for her life. And so she's recapping that, and Vince and Stephanie are pretty much just, they want to show so much gratitude for Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so this prompts up Shane McMahon and the corporation to show up and, just talk a big game and saying that he's had enough of Stone Cold and The Rock. Those are his big nemesis that he has to deal with at the moment. So he sets up a tag team match for the main event. So he said it's going to be Stone Cold and The Rock, knowing that they hate each other and coming off just of their big feud from WrestleMania and Backlash. He knows that they may have some friction, but he's like, you know what? They're going to tag team in the main event, and they're going to face The Undertaker. And Shane McMahon in this promo is like asking for like a volunteer from the corporation. And you see like China raise her hand, like she wants a piece of this. And that's pretty awesome. That's groundbreaking back in the day, for like a woman wanting to, wrestle the guys. That was a big deal, like back in the day. Like, you didn't see that like ever. But anyway, she's raising her hands up like she really wants it. She's the first one to do it. But then, you see Triple H raise his hand, and Shane McMahon gives, of course, Triple H the nod. So the main event of the first ever SmackDown is going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock against Triple H and The Undertaker. Now, if you're trying to sell this show to the networks, if you're trying to sell it to the executives to give you a full greenlit of a second show, I think this is the best possible matchup that you could do. So that sets up that, and that's the end of this segment. We cut to a backstage segment where Jeff Jarrett is upset and pissed off because that's the way his character has always been. And he's running around back looking for Owen Hart because apparently he has a match coming up next. And we cut to commercial break. We return, and it's supposed to be Val Venus versus Owen Hart, but instead it looks like it's going to be Jeff Jarrett. So Jeff Jarrett comes out to the ring. Looks like him and Val Venus are going to go at it. And when all of a sudden the Blue Blazer shows up and attacks Val Venus from behind. And for those of you that don't know, and this was a given to mostly everybody watching back in the day, the Blue Blazer, we all know, was played by Owen Hart. So it was him trying to play this superhero character, but we all know he was under that mask. So anyways, he shows up, so he's back as the Blue Blazer character. He hadn't been this character since like the early or late 80s. So why they went back to this character, I have no idea. Maybe they just wanted to freshen up Owen Hart's character, but I think he was fine as he was because he was in a tag team with Jeff Jarrett. They could have just continued that, but be that as it may. So we have the match anyway. It's Val Venus versus the Blue Blazer. The match is whatever. Jeff Jarrett remains at ringside with Deborah, and they end up helping Blue Blazer get the victory over Val Venus. And this props up Nicole Bass, who tries to help out Val Venus because he's getting beaten down by Jarrett and the Blue Blazer. And that scares off Val Venus, and she chases him to the back. And that leaves Jeff Jarrett and the Blue Blazer in the ring. The Godfather shows up. And apparently there was a segment on Monday Night Raw where the Godfather had won a match where he won the services of Deborah. And for those of you that watched wrestling back in the Attitude Era and know who the Godfather is, the gimmick was that he was a pimp. So he won her services, so I guess he's trying to take his property, so to speak. And again, this is 1999. Some of this stuff it just wouldn't pass in 2019. But in 1999, it was, galore, everything involving sex and violence and language and all that stuff, especially in the pro wrestling world. Anyways, they end up beating up on Godfather, not able to take Deborah. They go to the back, and we go to another commercial break. When we come back, we get a Blue Blazer interview with Kevin Kelly, and Kevin Kelly is asking why the Blue Blazer is back. And the Blue Blazer says, and this is just one of the worst promos by Owen Hart because he just absolutely does not know what to say. And he goes on this long pause. There's a silence in this interview. And then finally he says the Blue Blazer is back because there's too much cleavage and all this other stuff. And it's bro, he's helping out a guy named Jeff Jarrett who's got a valet where that's all her specialty is in this whole thing, is showing her cleavage and all that in Deborah. So his promo makes no sense on why the return of his character is there. So that was a weird interview. Made me laugh when the first thing he says is cleavage. That's why the Blue Blazer's back. So too much cleavage. And I guess he's going to rid the wrestling world of all that stuff. Or at least that's what he's trying to tell us. So we're done with that. Next matchup on the show is the Big Show versus Test. This match is real short. The Big Boss Man shows up to ringside. He's been feuding with Test because Test was part of the corporation and got excommunicated. So anyways, the Big Boss Man doesn't do anything in this matchup, and Big Show completely, destroys Test right away, gets the quick win. The only one note I can say here in this matchup is that Big Show does this amazing drop kick. And for a 7-foot guy or 7+, or however tall he is, the agility in doing a drop kick like that and seeing that for the first time back in 1999 was pretty awesome. And after that, Big Show makes his way to the back. Boss Man starts to beat on Test with the nightstick. That prompts Big Show to come right back out and save Test. And this is all leading to a formation of a stable that's coming. You'll be hearing about that. Or actually, by the time this show airs again in August, this faction will no longer exist. So I'll just go ahead and say it. There's a group stable that forms called the Union, which has the Big Show, Test, Ken Shamrock, and Mankind. So they're planting the seeds for that, because back in the day, WWE would set up storylines and continuity. So there was a lot of that back in the Attitude Era. So that's what I missed, and that's what this match was pretty much setting up. Up next, we have The Rock, who comes out for a promo. He's talking about how he doesn't really want to tag with Austin, and talking about wanting to whip his ass if he doesn't, if he gets out of line with him, which brings out Stone Cold Steve Austin himself is already in ring gear, which was weird. It was funny seeing Stone Cold in the ring gear, and he's wearing like a baseball cap. So he comes out and he's talking about The Rock, how he's just somebody who just shouts out, rhymes and gimmicks. And that they get into it real quick verbally, and then Shane McMahon comes out with The Undertaker, and basically what the whole purpose of this promo is to show that the corporation and the Ministry of Darkness are merging together to form the corporate ministry. Which, again, this could have been set up at the beginning of the show, in that 20-minute segment, that promo segment, but I guess they felt they had to space it out and, give some more time for Austin and Rock to show up during the show. So I guess it makes sense because, again, it's all leading to the first ever main event on this show, which is the tag match between Austin, Rock, Taker, and Triple H. So the corporate ministry is now officially a thing. We cut to a backstage interview with Kane and X-Pac, who are going to defend the WWE Tag Team titles against the New Age Outlaws later in the show. Kevin Kelly, again, is once again the interviewer. And again, gosh, I love these interviewers from back in the day because they just let them ask real questions and not be robotic and read off a script. So Kevin Kelly's talking about their Monday Night Raw interaction and how Kane ended up attacking X-Pac in some match that they had. And anyways, it's leading to friction between the two, and X-Pac saying, Kane may get his or whatnot. I wasn't really paying attention to this, but all I could take away from it is that there's friction going into this tag team match. Up next, we got another one-on-one match. It's Droz versus D'Lo Brown. Nothing to note here. Droz had a escort by the name of Prince Albert. So he tried to butt in on this match. And, he did, leading to a disqualification, leading to D'Lo Brown getting the victory. And the only thing noteworthy here in this matchup was that the whole gimmick of Droz and Prince Albert was them doing piercings. So it looks like they were going to try to pierce the tongue of D'Lo Brown to try to get some heat. And this prompted the return of Mark Henry to help save his friend, which he had been away for a while. I didn't really notice. Because again, I'm not only reviewing the SmackDown shows. What I'm doing is I'm actually been binge watching everything that's going on in WWE, WCW. Like I'm watching all the old Raws and Nitros, pay-per-views, Thunders, all that stuff. And again, I finally come to the SmackDown part of this era, so this is why it was a good opportunity to start this show. So, but like I said, I didn't really remember Mark Henry being gone from WWE at this time, so I guess he had been gone away for a while. So anyways, that's the big takeaway, is that Mark Henry has returned, and looks like him and D'Lo Brown are going to be a tag team again. We cut to a backstage interview with the New Age Outlaws, and there's friction between this team. The interviewer is asked, I think it's Kevin Kelly again, it's Kevin Kelly, and they're asking the New Age Outlaws about what it's going to be like facing their friend X-Pac for the titles, and Road Dogg saying like, yeah, we are friends, and for some reason Billy Gunn is like super pissed and saying that they need to focus on just being the champions. When it comes to championships, there's no friends, and Road Dogg's kind of taken aback by how upset Billy Gunn is over it, and we cut away to commercial. And then when we come back, it's the tag team title match. Kane and X-Pac defending the WWE Tag Team Championships against the New Age Outlaws. This was probably the best match on the show, along with the main event. I would say the main event and the tag title match were the two best wrestling matches on the show. Back and forth, there's friction along all four of these superstars, each getting the beat down on one another, and Kane and X-Pac end up getting the victory here, and Billy Gunn is super pissed off about losing the match. He's the one that gets pinned in this matchup. And yeah, so they win. So it's a pretty long match, and I think it goes to commercial break. And when they come back, the New Age Outlaws are arguing backstage, and Billy Gunn's super pissed. And this is actually going to be leading to a heel turn for Billy Gunn, because once again, this show, you won't be seeing this show for a while, because SmackDown actually starts in August, and by the time that show comes around and when I watch that and recap it for you, so much stuff would have already happened. So I'm just going to give you a heads up here. Billy Gunn does turn into a bad guy, a heel. So they're planting the seeds there, and the split between the New Age Outlaws. Up next, we have, and this one's pretty weird because I don't really remember seeing them talk a lot back in the day, but there's an in-ring interview between Michael Hayes and the Brood. Now, I know Edge is probably one of the best WWE superstars of all time. He was a really great promo when he turned into a singles competitor. But man, when he's here in this group, the Brood, with Christian and Gangrel, he gets the mic and talks on here, and it's so bad. It's so cartoonish and so not believable that they should just not give him the mic ever. And anyways, Michael Hayes is calling out this group on just being too gimmicky and not really knowing what they're about. And this in turn pisses off the Brood. So they end up doing a bloodbath on him, and that's the thing. That was the thing the Brood was known for, was the lights would flicker in and out, and it turned into this dark red lighting, and then they'd make this weird noise on the speakers, and when the lights turned back up, whichever opponent it was they were dealing with, they would douse them in a big bloodbath, which was probably just food coloring. Anyways, that's what they did to Michael Hayes. And again, since this show won't continue until August later down the year, Michael Hayes ends up teaming up with the Hardy Boys. So that's, I think, what that leads to. And yeah, that's the end of that segment. It's weird. It's a good spotlight on putting, turning the attention to different superstars in the shows. It's not all the same people. So seeing the Brood getting interviewed for a promo is actually pretty interesting. Although these guys can't really talk much, so I guess it's a fail. But I'll give them props. I'll give WWE props for actually giving them the opportunity to get this promo time, because usually promos are set for more the high level, mid level card guys, and then of course your main event guys. So it was pretty interesting to see these guys get interviewed, even though it didn't really lead to anything. Backstage, we cut to a promo with Ken Shamrock getting interviewed. He's got a matchup with Bradshaw in a street fight. Good promo here by Ken Shamrock, straight to the point, talking about how he's going to beat the shit out of Bradshaw and just beat on him, and he hopes he's ready to bring it to him, because he's going to continue to beat down on him, and then when he's done with him, he's just going to continue the beat down. And yeah, good, straight to the point. Ken Shamrock's pissed. He's been in this fight with the Ministry and trying to help Vince McMahon with Stephanie McMahon and this whole feud with The Undertaker. And I believe Bradshaw's the one that cost him the match with The Undertaker at Backlash. So this matchup has a point. And again, this was WWE back in the day. All this continuity, everything made sense. It wasn't just matches that just happened out of nowhere and then you don't have a story to it. There's a story here. Bradshaw cost Ken Shamrock his match with The Undertaker at Backlash. Sets up this street fight coming up right now on SmackDown. And, they built this as a street fight, no holds barred. But it's funny because for the first few minutes, there's a lot of wrestling going on in this match. And for it also being a street fight, there was only one weapon ever used in this thing, and it was a baseball bat, a wooden baseball bat. And the match didn't go on very long. They went to the outside for a little bit after grappling and doing some wrestling in a street fight. They grapple outside for a little bit, and then Shamrock finally gets a hold of that bat and puts Bradshaw on a choke and chokes him out. I mean, it was over within a few seconds, and like, damn, man, they built this up as a street fight. You're hoping to see some more like Attitude Era violence, weapons, and all that stuff. So that was pretty interesting that they went that route. Backstage, we got an interview with Mankind, who's talking about his matchup with the Big Boss Man, which is coming up in just a bit. Nothing really of note here, other than you do hear Billy Gunn in the background, who's apparently looking for X-Pac for some reason, and he's yelling and yelling. And Mick Foley was always good with his comedic timing. And the last line he says in his interviews, man, that guy's such a whiner. I don't know. It's his delivery. It's funny when you see it. So if you go back and check out these episodes, I like all the backstage segments, and we need more of that stuff. And Raw starting to kind of do that again. So hopefully they continue that trend and make it make sense with continuity and all that stuff. So it was cool to see all that stuff and all the intertwining storylines. They cut to another backstage segment. It's not an interview. You just see like a faraway camera shot of the corporate ministry all together, and Shane's bragging about forming the corporate ministry and that how he's running it, and the incompetent, I think is the word he uses, which is again that weird WWE verbiage that they just try to use sometimes, and it just comes off cheesy. But again, this is 1999. All the stars are there. We can't really complain. We love it all. Up next is Mankind versus the Big Boss Man. And again, nothing to note here other than this is to set up the faction known as the Union, which I just told you about earlier. So this match makes no sense because Mankind, the babyface, against Big Boss Man, the heel, the bad guy. So during the first few minutes of this match, Test shows up to ringside and throws the Big Boss Man back into the ring. Again, that should be a disqualification, right, if anybody interferes. But the match continues to go. And then, again, the Boss Man gets thrown outside to the ring. Again, this match wasn't very long. And all of a sudden, the Big Show shows up, grabs the Boss Man, throws him into the ring. Again, the ref is looking directly at all of this action going on. And I'm like, this should be a fucking disqualification right now. What is happening? And Mankind puts on the mandible claw to the Boss Man, wins, and that's that. Again, just to set up the Union faction that's about to form. We cut to a backstage segment. Again, X-Pac is in his locker room when Billy Gunn shows up in a rage, and they start brawling until we got some officials and agents in the back trying to break it up. Again, like I told you, I think Billy Gunn is on the verge of becoming a heel. So they're planting the seeds on that. And now we are finally at the main event. Stone Cold Steve Austin tag teaming with The Rock to take on The Undertaker and Triple H, who are now part of the corporate ministry. So you have Triple H comes out with China, but they're also accompanied by the Mean Street Posse. And Triple H was on the verge of becoming like a big heel singles guy. So his setup is not all complete yet. He doesn't have his own entrance music. He comes out to the No Chance in Hell theme song. He's still got the long pants. He doesn't have the short tights yet. He doesn't have his own shirt yet. He comes up with a cut-off WWF Attitude shirt at the time. And then we have The Undertaker comes out being accompanied by Paul Bearer and Shane McMahon. The funny thing about this is as they're walking to the ring, Shane McMahon is looking at The Undertaker in like just the weirdest way. And I'm like, is he into this guy? Like romantically? I don't know. That's just the kind of vibe I was getting off of Shane McMahon by the way he was looking at The Undertaker. I thought that was just pretty funny. The Rock comes out and it looks like The Undertaker and Triple H don't want to wait for Austin. So they try to get the jump start on The Rock, and they kind of do, but the glass breaks. Crowd goes nuts. Austin shows up. We have our tag team main event. It's back and forth. It's pretty good. It's your standard main event Austin-type match, brawling and all that stuff. The corporate ministry ends up interfering in this matchup. The ref calls for the bell, turns into a huge melee, which prompts out, Austin and Rock need some help, right? Because they're outnumbered. This brings out Test, Ken Shamrock, The Big Show. I don't think Mankind yet. I don't remember seeing Mankind, but he might have been in this melee. Anyway, it just reminded me of WCW Nitro, the early days, where there was just always a melee at the end of the fight, and it just super chaos to end the show. And so anyway, the ref already calls for the bell, right? So he calls for this thing to be over. The melee ends up, getting out of the way. The ministry and the union, they fight to the back. Triple H and The Rock fight to the crowd. You got The Undertaker and Austin continuing to battle in the ring. You got Shane McMahon with a chair outside, and it looks like he wants to give it to The Undertaker for leverage. He throws it into the ring, but out comes Vince McMahon to try to save the day. And him and Shane start going at it. Vince knocks him out. Undertaker is able to grab hold of that chair. Looks like he's going to, blast the hell out of Stone Cold. Vince McMahon stops him, but The Undertaker ends up hitting Vince McMahon straight square in the head. And I could tell you, it was one of the hardest shots to the head I've ever heard. Not as bad as the one as Kurt Angle took at Armageddon 2000. But this was pretty bad, and it looked like Vince got knocked out cold. Like, no pun intended with Stone Cold Steve Austin right there. Anyways, this was trying to set up Vince trying to return the favor after Austin saved Stephanie McMahon from The Undertaker this past Monday night on Raw. So Austin ends up stunning The Undertaker. And then Shane McMahon gets in the ring and starts beating the hell out of Vince. Vince is knocked out. And Shane McMahon is just squaring away on his face. So this prompts Austin to grab him, lay him with the stunner. Stone Cold Steve Austin gets some celebratory beers. And Vince McMahon's still knocked out. And Austin, being Stone Cold Steve Austin, starts dumping beer all over Vince McMahon to wake him up. I'm assuming that's what it was for, but it looks like he was just dumping beer on him to dump beer on him. He celebrates on the ropes to end the show. And that's the end of the first SmackDown. Interesting show. I liked it. If I was an executive, I'd be like, man, you're giving me everything in the WWE playbook. And then you got the four of the top superstars in the main event. Give me more SmackDown, which did ended up coming later in August of that year, which was again on the UPN network. But I remember, again, SmackDown for us, I grew up in Laredo, Texas, so this show for us either aired like on a Friday night late, and I remember I never wanted to go to middle school parties because of this. That's how much of a geek I was for WWE, and still am, But, it either aired on that night or on a late Saturday night at like 1 a.m, where like I stayed up super late to watch SmackDown. And that's just the way it was for us in Laredo. That's, we didn't have those channels. But had I grown up here where I live now in San Antonio, I'm sure I would have gotten to be able to see it on Thursdays. But, that's going to wrap it up for this special show, this premiere spinoff of SmackDown. And I'm going to be going through 1,000+ episodes. So hopefully you'll join with me on this journey. And maybe watch it for yourself if you have the WWE Network. Maybe watch that episode and then listen to this. Or put it on mute and listen to this episode while you're at it. You can multitask and do both. But good start to SmackDown. Good start. Let's see how this thing progresses through the years. Like I said, UPN was its destination for a long time. So again, I don't remember a lot of these episodes because either I didn't get to watch them late at night when they aired in my hometown, or I was being forced to go to a party at a middle school. Like a normal little teen should do. But I've always been a wrestling guy. Will continue to be a wrestling guy. So thank you for joining me on Palace Off the Top Rope presents SmackDown. I'll see you again down the line for this one. It's going to be a little bit because I'm binging everything else. So when I get to it, you'll see another pop up for this episode, this spin-off show. So you'll hear from me soon. Good night.